And a very good morning to you from Mirador Television, broadcasting from the White Hart Hotel in Lewes, nearly on the south coast of the UK. With me this morning, to my left or to my right, depending on which way you're looking at the picture and with which eye, is Max Hurd, Mighty Max.
Good morning.
Sometimes we call him Mad Max because he has to go with an axe. No, you don't, do you? No. He's never chased us around the studio with an axe yet. Myself, the mouse. He's the studied one. I'm the one that rants and raves and lets off a loose lip. But anyway, this morning we are going to take a look at the newspapers because there are a couple of things which are a headline in the newspapers, but which will be very key to our life locally. One is how much is the council tax going to rise, and the other is what caps are going to be taken off what service charges. In other words, income tax, council tax, everything is going to go up, and it all heads back to us, the voter, us, the constituent, us, the money bags, and particularly there is a warning from some conservative councils that they're likely to go bust. Now, most of these councils that have warned so far are in the south. Where are we? We're in the south.
Where are we conservative? Oh, we're not conservative. The Lewis district.
No, Lewis district council is not conservative.
Well, mine is where I live.
Right. Well, I think Eastbourne is, but the key thing about our situation is, of course, is that administratively we are run by Eastbourne. Eastbourne went bust a couple of years ago and had to be helped out. What I want to know is there a patent and obvious piece of paper which shows how our council tax is spent on us and not on Eastbourne? Because if it's headed up by the same people, then I can't think that a lot of the services that go together don't actually handle these things together. I would like to know. That's what I would like to know. So those two issues are in the headlines or the front pages of the paper this morning, and they are raising some concerns, I'm sure, locally.
Yeah.
What about yours? You say that yours is not. It's not a conservative.
Oh, it is.
It is.
Where I live has only ever been conservative its entire existence. We've never had Labour, never had Lib Dem. The only thing we've ever had, other than conservative, is one independent. So very strong conservative district where I live.
Right. So, well, I mean, it will be interesting to see whether other conservative councils jump onto the bandwagon, and whether, in fact, our council jumps onto the bandwagon. Lewis is a strange council, in my opinion, and because it's attached to a conservative administration in Eastbourne, is even stranger. They seem to want to hide everything. They don't seem to want to tell us anything. And in fact, it looks as if that there is one committee that is monitors the actions of the executive, and it never seems to ask the right questions. It never seems to call the right executives in, and it never seems to address or check or monitor the right issues. So it worries me that these sort of things are kept from us. It is noticeable that even though invitations have gone out, local politicians do not like coming on Mirador Television. Now, I think that Stuart Downey. Sorry?
No, nothing. I can't say
it. Stuart, energy man, ex-FT man, has, I believe, got a politician coming in tomorrow morning, which is a stride in the right direction for both, because all governments like to be secretive. They do not like people to know what's going on, and yet their strength lies in letting people and keeping people well informed.
Yeah.
So here we are, ready and waiting. Stuart Dolby is what we were searching for. Hey, well done, Stuart. You got us both going there. All right, shall we look at the headlines on the front pages? Yeah. Right. Okay, the Times. Sunak will help the poorest by boosting a living wage. So there is a front page picture there of Joe Biden shaking hands with Xi, the Chinese premier. And they seem to be getting along quite well together. But there is always the problem of Formosa, Taiwan. And the Chinese have said quite categorically, it's a bit like Northern Ireland. I mean, it's in the constitution of the Irish Republic, I believe, that the island of Ireland should be the island of Ireland, and that it is their duty to take over Northern Ireland, and that has always caused tension in the region politically. I wonder if this is going to be the same, Max. That the Chinese saying that they will not give up on the idea of Formosa. I call it Formosa. Now it's Taiwan. And that Joe Biden is whistling in the dark.
Yeah. I don't think China will ever give up.
Well, it is. I mean, I'll tell you, to be quite honest with you, I wouldn't be a politician in the modern day, not for all the tea, if you'll excuse it, all the tea in China. Everything is in such a mess. The trouble is that it's the politicians that have got us into this mess. They don't listen. They are jaw. They all tell us what they're going to do. I would much rather that we actually saw a bunch of people in Westminster who consulted with the people. They consulted with their colleagues. They consulted with the experts and came to sensible conclusions instead of political ones. Oh, what a dream, Keith. What a dream. You'll never get away with that. You'll never see that. But nonetheless, it's what I would like. I think governance it's got out of control. It got absolutely out of control.
Bit of an understatement.
The autumn statement comes on Thursday, of course. Everybody is looking forward to that. And everybody's speculating and guessing. But by Thursday, we'll have had it. And then, if they don't renege on their promises, it will be implemented, come what may. Although, of course, it's got to be debated and looked at carefully by the two houses before it's put into operation. The Times says Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is to prioritise support for the poorest and boost the living wage from £9.50 an hour to about £10.40 an hour. There you go, my boy. Hey, right, we're in trouble already. According to the paper, 8 million households will also receive a cost of living payment worth up to $1,100 a year. Well, that's interesting.
Let's just keep printing money because that works.
Well, we do seem to be giving it away. It's like the Romans used to give away. Well, what the Romans did was they held games. They say, Max, Keith, here's a dagger, go down and kill each other. And then the populace would go, hey, yay, and popularity would retain. But so far as I'm aware, I haven't heard a politician say, give Max and Keith a sword and go down and kill each other. But they are playing the game of let's throw candy to the crowds and to keep them quiet. It's very disturbing. Right, okay, let's go to the next.
Can I just say actually about the minimum wage thing? Increased by 90 pence. That's a hell of a lot, actually, on an hourly rate. Now, the thing is, small businesses like Mirador Television, for example, a lot of small businesses might not be able to afford to just pay a whole £1 an hour more. And a lot of businesses go under every time the minimum wage is increased. Not to say that raising it is a bad idea, because everyone wants more money, but it does have an effect on small businesses.
I promise everybody I did not pay you to say that. because one of the things that I've ranted and raved about is that the British economy is made up of 90% plus of SMEs, small to medium-sized enterprises. And every time that the government legislates about business affairs, it always takes the side or the part or makes sure it is good for big business.
Because that's who funds them.
That's crazy.
No, but that's who funds them.
Sorry?
That's who funds them.
Actually, that's not true. If you've got 90% of the economy, we're all paying tax. You add up.
No. I mean, that's who funds their campaign.
Oh, yes. I see what you mean. Yes, no, you're quite right. You're quite right. They are in boughs and big business.
Let me just bring it up, actually, whilst we're talking about minimum wage. Hang on a moment. National minimum wage across age groups. Okay.
All right.
Here we go. Do you know what minimum wage for someone under 18 is?
You did tell me once, and I was appalled. Yes. You tell me.
And this is what... so, under 18, so 17 years old, is £4.81 an hour.
Well, I won't buy a lot at the supermarket, will it?
No, it won't. But 18 to 20, so my age, 19, is from minimum wage is £6.83.
Right.
21 to 22 is £9.18 an hour minimum wage, and minimum wage only starts at 23 years old. And for a 23-year-old and over, minimum wage is £9.50 an hour.
Right, and well, I suppose the whole range will go up, won't they? You'll add £1 onto each of those. Is that right? I mean, £1 will be added onto £4, something as much as £9.50. Is that correct? Because I don't know much about these minimum wages, and you obviously have made a bit of a study of them.
Not quite.
No.
But my girlfriend really recently turned 18 a couple months ago, and she was on £4.81. But a couple months ago, she got a increased wage to £6.83. So she's still on minimum wage, but she's 18 now.
Right.
But
so when the moment she became 18, her salary went up.
Yeah, but a couple of weeks ago, my birthday, I was 18 a couple of weeks ago, so I was only entitled to £4.81 an hour.
Did we do rather better by you than that?
Yes, you did. I'm not going to say any more than that.
Sometimes we're a bit in pain, but we get there.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
£4.81, you can't. That's ridiculous.
Yes, it is
ridiculous.
I'm not quite sure how these wages are set. I mean, I believe in paying the labourer how worthy his hire. In other words, how useful is someone to us, and how much money have we got to pay for that service, which we need, and we pay it. But not every small business has got that facility, and that's particularly true of the high street shops. They have people, they have assistants and so on, and they are only able to, and you're quite right to say, this burden is going to be faced by everybody. They only are able to pay the minimum wage to their shop assistants. And that, I think you've explained to me in one brief sentence why you get so many kids in the shops. Yeah. For instance, women's clothing shops. I'm not saying they're not good and so on, but quite often they're quite young. They're 17 or 18.
Same cafes.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, or KPs, kitchen porters in restaurants. That's where my brother works. He's a dishwasher at a local pub in the village, and luckily, he's getting well above minimum wage for his age. So
dishwashers are paid quite well.
No, I think where we live pays well. because it's such a small town. It's difficult to find people to employ.
Right.
Otherwise, people have to travel out of area really far to come here. So they have to keep the people in the village.
Right.
So they pay, I think, $7.20 an hour, and he was 16 when he started.
Right.
So that was quite good.
Okay.
But it really does depend on where you live.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it would. I mean, one of the things that amazed me is this is a few years ago now, but it's before beer was nudging £4, £5 a pint. I think, in fact, it was something down here. It was something like £2.80. And I went back.
What year was this?
Sorry?
What year was this?
This was about 2 years ago.
What?
Yeah, about 2 years ago. I mean, the rise in the cost of a pint has been quite dramatic.
Well, it's not just the pints in here, for example, in a restaurant, a pub, a restaurant, or wherever, or here, a hotel. They're going up in the shops quite a lot. I've recently got my ID about 8 months ago, my driver's license. So I started buying beer. It was £4.50 for 4 pints of Budweiser.
For 4 pints of Budweiser?
Yeah, in Sainsbury's.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Now, keep in mind, that was on offer from £5, but it's now £6 for 4 pints.
Yeah.
But then you go to a pub and then it's £6 for one. Yeah. It's like, why would I go to a pub? Yeah. I get the atmosphere and the social aspect, but I can't afford to do that.
But I went back to my hometown of Sutton Coldfield, which actually is a very, very prosperous area. And I went into an old pub that I used to go into as a young man before I left for Canada, the Horse and Jockey. And I ordered a half a pint of lager. And she came back and said, that'll be 80 pence. And I said, what? For a half a lager? Yes, she said. And a pint there was about £1.60, £1.70, as opposed to the £2.40 which it was costing down here. So there's a wide variety. If you really want to see the difference in the cost of living between the North, Midlands, South, East and West, is all you have to do is to go to a pub and see how much they're charging for a pint.
Cornwall is very expensive. That's where my sister lives.
Well, I find that strange and disturbing because Cornwall is very, very rural still.
Yeah, but it's very touristy.
Yes, I suppose so. I mean, actually, one of the interesting things is in London, you go into a side street pub and you pay X amount. I don't know what it is for a pint now. You go to a pub that is verging on, let's say, Covent Garden, and it's almost £2 extra. They stick it on because it's the tourist. The tourist goes in. 9 times out of 10, he hasn't a clue that's expensive. He doesn't understand the currency system any more than we do when we go abroad. You know, how much do you want, and you're always trying to convert it in your mind. Is how much would that be back home? And you say, oh, that's only £1, and we were paying £2 at home. But then what you find is that it's the cheap stuff. Your head the next morning is. Oh.
I will tell you where the cheapest place to drink is that I know of in the local area. Madeira Drive, Brighton. There's a Brighton Motor Club, and it has a bar there. £2.50 a pint.
Wow, that's very good. Do you have to belong to the?
Yeah, you have to belong to the club.
Yeah. The clubs actually traditionally are. I mean, I don't know how much. For instance, the only club I know in town here is the Con Club. I don't know whether the beer is cheaper in there, but quite often what happens is that people pay a membership fee, and that membership fee will subsidise some things like the cost of beer. Anyway, let's go on to the Telegraph, shall we?
We're only on the second paper and we're 20 minutes in.
Right.
Oh, I do see.
There's lots to talk about this morning.
Jordan Peterson there in the Daily Telegraph. Jordan Peterson on the side. What's he in there for?
Jordan Peterson, the professor on his anti-woke university. Right. Bake Off, burnout.
Okay, that's something else.
All right, we'll stop at Bake Off, burnout.
Yeah.
Right, that's Jordan Peterson. You want to have something to say about that, do you?
Jordan Peterson is a personal hero of mine.
Right.
I would. They do say never meet your heroes, but I would like to meet him. You know, he's just a brilliant guy.
Right. And what's the main reason for your admiration for this man?
He tries to. The reason he's probably quite a lot of the. He is the reason who I am. That he's shaped me quite a lot, actually, because he gives young men a lot of advice on morals and what to do in life, and what your aspects in life should be, and setting up plans and your future, setting up for the future. What can you do? He's somewhat like a father figure, I suppose. Which, I mean, I don't know if you've seen the single parent household rates in this country, but that sort of person, Jordan Peterson, is very needed online today.
Right. Okay. Well, there you are. Recommendation from Mighty Max.
Yeah.
Jordan Peterson. Some of you should tap in and take a look at him.
Yeah, brilliant guy.
It will help you. Incidentally, there's on the picture of the Telegraph, front page of the Telegraph, is Ian Duncan Smith, never a prime minister, but the leader of the Conservative Party for a short period of time, and he launched his campaign in Lewis. So I was there, and the sort of thing that Duncan Smith's okay. I mean, there's nothing naughty about him that I know, but I said to him, Mr. Duncan Smith, what are you doing about provincial papers? Because they will have as big an impact on your campaign as the national press. And he said, oh, the press, we can handle them. We have no fears from them. He was a leader for about 6 months. Just sometimes they're so unrealistic what they view. But anyway, the Telegraph basically is saying a steep increase in council tax, and I think that this is one of the things that will raise alarm bells amongst the local electorate, amongst our viewers, that the council tax is not protected, that it can go up by X amount, and it says the average council tax bills are expected to exceed £2,000 a year for the first time. The paper says it plans by the Prime Minister and his Chancellor to let town halls raise the levy by 5% would mean households in Band D face paying up to £100 extra. Now, the council tax is most people understand.
Oh, sorry, is that £100 a month extra?
Up to, well, no, £100 extra. Well, I don't know. No, I don't think it could be £100 a month. Is
no. Well,
I don't know.
Could it? No, there's no way it could be.
No, they couldn't. £100 a month would be £1,200. They're not talking about that because
So what's that?
To exceed £2,000 a year, so up to £100 more. But I mean, everybody is concerned at the council tax, and once again, to me, a lot of the criticisms of governance, and I say governance because I'm including everything, including the local district council and even the town council, is that they always are saying to us, oh gosh, we've got to raise the council tax because we've got to buy this and we've got to buy that and the cost of living, etc. Very few of them then put up what they're spending this money on. They are legally obliged to do so, of course, and we can actually eventually see the books, but not far enough or not soon enough to know whether we're getting a council that is spending our money wisely or not wisely.
It's not going to be wisely, let's be honest. Let's be honest, it's not going to be wisely, is it?
No, it's not.
No.
In fact, how on earth people find things to spend money on that they do, I have no idea. But it certainly isn't on things for the benefit of the citizens who are actually chunking up the cash. So there we are. That's from the Telegraph. It's now let's see.
Nine
It's
o'clock.
8:56. It's coming up to the witching hour of 9 o'clock. We are Mirador Television. This is Max Hurd and Keith Hayes steering you through for a couple of hours on what's going on in our society. And I can feel my mouth getting dry again. So, Max, perhaps we should pay a visit to our version of the Potter's Wheel.
Yes. All right. Here we go. All right, and we're back. Should we go just straight into the next headline?
Why not? Because it's exactly what we were talking about a moment ago. Tory councils warn Sunak on a stark rise of bankruptcy. Now, bankruptcy in the commercial sector is bad enough. But when you've got local authorities going bust, questions really need to be asked about what they're spending some of their money on. Because you see them boasting about, we see them saying, look what we did. We provided night lights or cats with only one ear. That sort of stuff. Well, that's very, very nice to look after cats in such a way. And I'm sure that cat lovers will be ready to wring my neck. But the fact of the matter is, I would not put it as a priority. And some of the things that they spend their money on, I wouldn't personally put as a priority. And I wonder whether, in fact, the things that we pay for as a council, which are always have to embrace what councils personally think. Councils get behind sort of white cats, and then everybody has to listen to support for white cats, even though cats have disappeared in the meantime. But that's the way that they actually spend money locally. So I think that we need, with all these raises in taxes, we need a better system of letting us know how the money is spent. And that really is down to the councils. We have given them the money to do these sort of things. They should be providing a decent outlook. And they shouldn't, but they do, is leave it to people like us to alert everybody to to what's going on locally. The big problem with that, of course, is that we don't know. And we don't have great resources where we've got roving reporters out digging into various stories. We have to take advisories, tip-offs, in other words, and we have to go digging into as much as we can. It's not easy for us to do that. So trying to keep track of what's being spent should be as much the responsibility. Actually, it is, but they don't fulfill it. It should be fulfilling the responsibility for informing the public of what they're up to, what they're spending, and why. Right, Max, I'll go to the next paper. The Starmer. Raise UK taxes for Amazon and non-DOMs.
What is a non-dom?
Non-domestics.
Oh, okay.
Something like Google.
So like Starbucks and those sorts of things.
So that's where he thinks that the money should be coming from. There is a certain legitimacy to that agenda, I think.
Yeah.
The I says that she has an exclusive interview with Sir Keir Starmer, And he says big business and wealthy non-domiciled individuals should be paying for the £60 billion black hole in our public finances. He says businesses, including Amazon and Google, should take the brunt of costs, not lower earners. Does he have a point? What's your view?
Yes, he has a point. I understand the idea of doing that. But the problem with taxing the millionaires and the billionaires and the big corporations is they're just going to leave. Now, I know he's talking about non-doms, and I'm not quite sure how the regulations work on that, so I won't go into that too much. But just saying tax the rich is just a terrible idea, because the rich will just go, okay, goodbye, and just leave.
Yes, when we have in our history had tax exiles, people who go abroad to live because they don't want to pay the taxes here.
If I start making a very decent amount of money when I'm older, I'm probably going to do that.
Well, it's very easy when you don't have money to say, oh, of course, I would put my money in. I don't understand how somebody could. But I'll tell you, if a couple of million quid came through my letterbox, I would be the first to sit down there. I've got to think this through. What am I going to do with this? No matter how much I may have boasted that I would help local councils and so on. I mean, if I was a businessman, if I wanted that money to flourish, the first thing I would do is say, well, okay, what you've got to do then is make sure that I can see and understand the various bits of information that would let me understand how the council is spending its money. Not its money, my money.
Yeah, that's a good point. My money.
Right, the Daily Express. Rishi gets it. Pensioners at the forefront. Now, always, I was going to say a government apologist. It's not really, but it does give the government of the day the chance to voice their opinions and to actually win the support of some media. But whatever is happening at the moment is not conducive to them using the money wisely, according to who was that? Which paper was that? That was the Express. Yes, the Daily Express. All right. Okay. The Mirror. Here we go. The good old Mirror, running away from politics at the very moment that it's no, they're not. I take it back because their subheading is exclusive. Star speaks out. And the mess that football has got us into is reflective of the mess we're in. But what they do is bend the knee and that sort of stuff, because their players are not overly enthusiastic about marching and getting too involved. Right, the Star speaks out, axe the triple lock, and people will die. Ricky Tomlinson, a TV legend. Do you know who Ricky Tomlinson is?
Never heard of him. What's his name?
He's a TV legend.
What's his name?
Ricky Tomlinson.
Ricky Tomlinson.
Yeah. Warning ahead of today's budget, tomorrow's budget. Sorry. It says no more than an interview with actor Ricky Tomlinson.
Let me see.
Who says people will die if the triple lock pledge. That's where you saw that quote. The triple lock pledge is axed, and Thursday's autumn statement.
Oh no, I do know him. The Royal Family, the TV show. Yeah, there's a few things I recognize him from. Yeah, but all of these are from like the 90s. They're all very old.
Well, I suppose that's why they're at the moment doing a lot of the marching that is going on, because it's the older folk that are a bit upset, isn't it?
Do you remember this show?
Oh, the Royal Family.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, that's it. That's who he is.
Ah, right.
So, yeah.
Well, that would be his natural audience, I would have thought. Yeah. Okay, the Metro. Zelensky in person in Kherson. He's turned up on site of what must be a very proud moment for the Ukrainians, because they have put the mighty Russian army to flight. and they haven't, but in certain parts of Ukraine, which the Russians occupied, they most certainly have. And they're feeling pretty good about it. And Zelensky is going to various places to say, well done, good and proper servant. He also goes to other places, but that's the main place to find out comments from politicians who appear anywhere, but particularly appear on Mirador television. See? Sealed with a kiss. Yes, we can. Which paper is this? This is the Mirror. This is the Metro. Sealed with a kiss. And basically, what it's on about is once again, it's talking about Zelensky flying to the relieved city. And he says resending the key to the city in the Donbass region. Why can't I pronounce that, Donbass? I mean, I worked in the bloody place for a long time. At the beginning of the end of the war, the paper also reports that the much-hailed awaited deal between France and the UK to tackle the number of people crossing the Channel is about to be implemented. Well, that's another one, which, I mean, actually, strangely enough, I think that people on the ground have handled lockdowns and so on and so forth very well. They haven't handled immigrants terribly well because they see them as a threat. And as the immigrants come ashore, so the average punter is having now, once having greeted them and flown the flag and so on and so forth, is now having problems with them and is saying, hey, stop, come on, stop. We don't want overwhelming immigration here. And it is one of the things that is exercising the mind. Do you have anything to say?
Not about that, no.
Not
just yet, but okay. We're going on to the Daily Mail, so I do have something to say about this.
All right, okay, the Daily Mail. Suella signs a £63 million deal with France to fight Channel Mayhem. But here's why it must deliver. Nurses paying the price of migrant crisis. Okay.
Yeah, so the headline here, nurses paying the prices for migrant crisis. That is very true. I really do hate the narrative that the NHS is underfunded, because it's not. The NHS has never had a pay cut in its existence. Okay, it's not underfunded. We shovel so much money into it. What it is overwhelmed, and a lot of that is due to the migrant crisis. What do you agree?
Oh yes, I do. Our society can only bear, particularly in a time of financial crisis, of raging inflation, of high price rises, is we really have to watch how many people come to the feeding bowl. And when I say that, I don't mean the handouts. I mean the whole feeding bowl. I mean, even the very wealthy have to eat, and they are picking up as much tab as we are, the increase of groceries. But migrants, the migrant issue, is boosting it. Now, I haven't said that I'm anti-migrant. What I do believe is that we need to plan it carefully. Because right from my first experience of fleeing migrants, particularly from areas that they don't feel viable for them to live in anymore, is that it's the criminals that get in first. And that goes back to, I think it was 1956.
Yeah, it's always going to be the criminals. Yeah. It's always going to be the criminals, because the law-abiding citizens are going to come through the legal way.
You're right. Although I must say that it does seem as if some people are being sold, give us your money and you can come to. Yeah. Good morning. How are you this morning?
Morning.
That's good. Where are you from?
Huddersfield.
Hayward's Heath.
Yeah.
What are you doing down here?
Wet.
Just got a day out together. We just got wet.
Why have you come down today?
Why?
Why? Yeah.
See this gentleman here.
Sorry? Did you see this gentleman? Are you from Lewis? You're from Lewis, are you?
No.
Oh, you're both from Hayward's Heath.
No, seafood.
Oh, Seaford, right. Come and say hello.
Do you want to explain what we're doing here, Keith?
Right.
Do you want to explain what we're doing here?
Yes, we're the local television service. And when
Okay.
people come into the hotel, we say, come and say hello to everybody and tell us why you're here.
We're not on radio, are we?
No, not on radio, you're on television.
Okay.
It goes out YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Blogger.
You come and say hello.
No.
No. Okay. It's good of you to come and talk to us anyway and tell us why you're here. Because we like to see the number of different type of people and where they're from and come through the hotel doors. It's fascinating, actually. When you sit here day after day after day to see the difference in people, why they're here, who they are, it's absolutely fascinating.
Okay.
You come and join us one morning and watch.
I'm from the Hayward Heath area as well. I'm from
Yeah.
Cookfield.
Oh, okay.
Lovely to see you.
Yeah. And you. Bye-bye.
Bye. There we are. Some visitors to Lewis from Hayward's Heath. Right, the price of migrant crisis. Well, you had some key points to make there.
Yeah,
And I think they were right.
got a few more. It says here again. I'll read the headline once again. Nurses paying the price for migrant crisis. What? So I've got the statistics here.
Yes.
The NHS budget for 2022 was 190 billion. 190 billion pounds. That is not underfunding. It is clearly overwhelmed. That is the issue. We are the second most densely populated country in Europe. And why are they all coming over here?
Yes.
The only reason they're doing that because they come from Afghanistan. They go to Turkey. They go to Italy, France, Germany. All these very safe
we're an attractive
countries.
place to come financially.
And then they cross the channel and they come here because we give the most amount of money.
Max, you are all of 19. This question has been asked for the last 19 years, in other words, during your life, and almost before my lifetime. It's always the same question, and nobody ever seems to have the answer. We fall for it every time, that wherever there's problems in the world, we all use our heart instead of our head. And then later on, our head kicks in, and what we then do is we start to complain bitterly about the effects of the very thing that we supported, sort of 3 or 4 months before.
Well, I've never supported this, but I understand what you mean.
Yeah.
Also, there are a lot of Albanians coming over as well.
Right.
There was a recent statistic showing that 1% of all Albanian men are living in the United Kingdom.
Wow.
1% of all Albanian men.
Can I lighten the mood slightly about Albanians? Because when I was in Kosovo, we went across the border several times into Albania. And in fact, Kosovars are known as either Serbian Kosovars or Albanian Kosovars. And the Albanians are by far the biggest ethnic group in Kosovo. So we went across to the second city called Skodra. I think it's a bit better developed now, but in those days it only had one traffic light in the middle, just one traffic light, and most people got around on bicycles. But we looked for a place to have lunch, and we came across this little place, and we pulled up. We got a jeep, and we went in and said, "Can we get lunch?" and so on. And he said, "Oh yes," but it was a time of the World Cup. And all the waiters, and well, not all the waiters, but most of the people that were serving and so on, were in watching the World Cup. And so the owner grabbed them by the ear and said, "Here, you look after these people." And it was a delicious meal, I have to say, a delicious meal. But the wine was locally grown, and it was in plastic bottles, old Coke bottles. But one poor chap was told, "Get out there," because it was a very hot day. And he had a hose which he played on our vehicle to keep the dust from getting too thick. And here's this poor chap. He could hear all the roar of his pals. It's like, "Oh, ah, oh!" And he had to stand there with the hose, washing down the jeep. Oh boy, did he love us! And the lunch was so good. We didn't exactly hurry. But Albanians,
they're just fleeing that Albanian war that's going on right now. You know, that Albanian war.
Yeah.
There isn't an Albanian war, just to be clear.
Actually, one of the things that I find with my travels is that those countries that were totally cut off. Now, Romania was one. Ceausescu did. I mean, if you want to admire the man for anything, he managed to cut off all communication from to people inside Romania. They had no idea what was going on in the rest of the world, and he cut most communication in Romania coming out. Now that changed, of course, in 2006, just after he had been overthrown, and they became members of the European Union. But Albania is much the same. Is Hoxha, who was the overpowering, I was going to say president, but he was a dictator, managed to cut the country off from anywhere, including Kosovo, which isn't exactly the center of the world, but nonetheless. And he did it so carefully, so well, that they had no idea what was going on. Now it takes societies generations to get away from that, as they really do not know what's going on, and they don't suddenly have a rush of, oh gosh, let's watch the television. They're much more likely to want to watch new movies and that sort of thing. Those are the sort of things that when the borders come down, when you went over. We went over the border at a rather different type of. If you drive up at the border, you're used to pulling out your passport and showing it to some little man in a booth, and he either stamps it or doesn't stamp it or whatever. At this little border point, first of all, there was a big sign up that said any members of the armed forces carrying guns must hand them in here. Secondly, the immigration visa was handled on an old typewriter, and generally speaking, most of them didn't know what they were doing. I mean, that's the sort of country that it was. And when you got across there, the fields, it was idyllic from a point of view of tourism, because you saw the ladies with the big white things to keep the sun off their backs, but they were working in the fields. They were pulling the odd tractor, and most of the farmers had got a shotgun slung across their back. It was an eye opener for me, and as I say, very pretty. My goodness me, how rural! But can you imagine what their homes must be like and their economy must be like if they're living like that? And no wonder they actually want to get away to somewhere else.
Yeah, I don't blame them. I wouldn't want to live there. It's a terrible country, I'm sure, but they don't have a right to this country.
No, quite right. I mean, I'm only just pointing out, but most of us, or most people, picture Albania or a lot of other places as being very sophisticated, and they're not. They're not sophisticated places at all. In Montenegro, for instance, in the Balkans, is on the coast. It was quite sophisticated because they had a lot of overseas visitors and so on. But the moment you actually drove back up through the country, beautiful country, absolutely stunning country, and wherever you went, anywhere near either a shop or a store on the way up or a restaurant, is the smell of the toilets was overpowering.
What? Really?
Yeah. They were generally speaking open toilets, and there were holes in the ground. And,
I heard China's like that, and a lot of Asia.
I'm sure much of it is. Yeah.
Where it's just the toilets are just holes in the ground.
Right, going from the smelly hole in the ground, the Financial Times, Taiwan extensions overshadow Biden and Xi's push to improve relations. So China is not backing down on Taiwan, and despite the fact that Joe Biden is working hard to ease international tension by getting along with the Chinese, he's not getting much ground given. And now it will be interesting to see how much ground the United States will give to China. Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning.
Our good friend Kevin, who looks after the bar, is here. He looks at me with a keen eye to see whether I was ready to taste his beer, and he says, "No, it's not today." Okay. So Joe Biden and Xi Jinping push to improve relations is tempered by the fact that foreign policy, Chinese foreign policy, remains that Taiwan belongs to us and we want it back. Thank you. The Sun, back to sport. Why I blanked Gary Neville by Ronaldo. For God's sake, I don't know. This guy Ronaldo, you would think that he was a dictator somewhere. The way everybody seems to pay attention to him and worry about what he thinks.
Well,
He's hurt or not.
he just got fired from his team for talking badly about it.
To talk about.
Ronaldo got fired for talking badly about his own team and the management.
Oh, right.
He said he criticised management, saying it was mismanaged, like everything is.
Yeah. They don't like that.
No.
Managers don't like that. They are. It's a fiefdom, football managers. But I mean, I really can't get excited about all this stuff. But obviously, the soccer aficionados like reading about it, just the same as I suppose that our ordinary society likes reading about a little scandal in the theatre or a little scandal in movies or whatever.
Yeah.
Wow, that made my day. The Star. We've had an Earth. It's one damn thing out of another at the moment. It's a clucking disgrace. Now we can't even have eggs with our traditional brekkies. The Star reports on a shortage of eggs and how that is impacting Britain's traditional breakfast. It doesn't say why we got a shortage of eggs. Do you know why we got a shortage of eggs?
No.
No,
I don't.
I suppose you have to buy the Star and read inside to find out.
Just to let you know, the computer is frozen. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
So we'll give it a moment to clear itself up.
Okay, so we're talking. Well, what I found is that the sound seems to carry on.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find.
Sound seems to carry on.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds fine.
Yeah, right. Well, I'll keep talking as much as I can, and Max will do his best to get the picture back to you. It is very, very, very poor weather out there. We didn't mention the weather, and never mind the weather as long as we're together. But we did this morning, both of us. Well, he got terribly wet. I just made it. There we go. 12 degrees today in Lewis. Much chillier than it has been. And let's see. If I put my spectacles on, I can tell you what the rest of the weather is going to be. It feels like 9 degrees, so it's cold out there because of the breeze. It's a 6-hour rain outlook. It's rain continuing until 2 p.m. So if you've got a Macintosh or an umbrella, and I wouldn't advise an umbrella today, it's likely to be turned inside out.
Well, no, it's not raining at 2 p.m. Then continues on.
It gets a bit brighter in the afternoon, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
3 p.m. it stops raining, and then it continues again and doesn't stop until Thursday. So
put up your umbrella this morning and keep it up until Thursday afternoon, Thursday night. Yeah, right. Oh dear. It's pretty poor outside, but I'm quite sure that it's having some effect.
And I don't know if it's not coming across on the audio, which is good, but the wind is coming down through the fireplace here.
Yes, I can hear it whistling.
You can hear it whistling. You can't hear it on here, I don't think. No, I couldn't, at least.
Yeah, I think the breeze is moderate to heavy, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And certainly it blew my shopping trolley. I bring a shopping trolley in because that's where we store our mobile television station, in the shopping trolley at the moment. We're going to get more sophisticated. We're going to get a toolbox later.
Typically, it's not a shopping trolley, Keith.
But I mean,
it's not a shopping trolley. It's a I can't remember what it's called now. It's not a shopping trolley.
Oh, it's not a shopping trolley.
It's an old people trolley.
An old people's trolley. Oh dear, oh dear, dear. Anyway, that's what it was in, and it tipped it over. And then it decided to take my hat and blow it down the street. Actually, even when it was a moderate breeze, the breeze took my hat the other day, and it blew on the looking lady. Gosh, I said, it's windy. It's always blowing my hat off, and I'm chasing down the street to find that some lovely lady had got a foot on it. But she was clasping it, having saved the day, absolutely saved the day. And here it is to test her skill in stopping life. Shall we just take a very quick break? We'll go somewhere and we'll come back with a program. No. Right. What are we supposed to do?
We'll go on to what are the local stories, I suppose, because we can't travel here, so we're just going to have to continue until we.
Oh right. We need sound because we can't get visual. Is that it?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Well, what Max is doing is he's turning over the pages of the newspaper because one of his little duties, as it were, while I'm rabbiting on, is to see and take a look through the sides of the mail. He can find any stories that he thinks would be more important than being on the inside, but also some of the nice little stories that you do find, interesting stories that you find on the inside, and many people don't actually get to. I mean, as most people now know, a newspaper is laid out so you get the headlines on the front page and then the headline report on the back page, because people actually look at the front page and then turn the paper over and look at the back page. What's in between quite often gets missed. So what have you got there, Max?
So it was Charles's birthday yesterday. He's just turned 74 years old. So we could potentially have another 20 years of Charles.
Who's this? Sorry, whose birthday?
King Charles.
Oh, right. Is his birthday when?
Yesterday.
Oh, was it? How old is he?
74 years old.
74. A spring chicken. A spring chicken.
Spring chicken. Yeah. There's a story there that I'm not even gonna bother looking at. I don't know. I think. What are the local ones? From, Sussex.
I will try and look at the local ones now. The local headlines. So need to change the page.
Okay, I've got a one here. Murderer claims he accidentally killed his ex-girlfriend when he threw an axe at a tree.
Oh, I'm sorry to laugh.
I know.
Oh dear, I hate this. Where I go to you can shake a sticker.
So, a local story actually is. Did you know the hosepipe ban is still in effect?
No.
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
My neighbours recently got fined for using their hose. I think this was a month ago now. They were fined for using their hose. Do you know how much they were fined?
How much?
£2,000.
Good grief! What?
For using their hose.
£2,000.
Yeah.
What do they use their hose on?
Okay. All right, and we're back, and everything isn't frozen anymore.
Right. That's
Sorry
lovely.
about that. Let me
That's
just
lovely.
bring your camera.
Do I
back
look
into
frozen?
it. Your camera isn't in yet.
Oh dear,
There
the
you
camera isn't in yet. Is it
There you
in yet?
There you
Right,
go. Yours is.
There you go. I asked if I look frozen. Now you can make up your minds. All right, just looking at one or two things locally before we go back to your lovely stories in the inside of the newspaper. Is an area is cordoned off after a medical incident in Chichester City Centre.
Oh, we've been through that.
Sorry,
Yeah, we've covered that.
did we?
Yeah.
When did that happen then?
That happened last week.
Right. In that case, the local news is not up to date, which is a great pity, because if we're going to rely upon it as people, we really need to be able to get the latest news.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I have a interesting story here. It's not local because it's in the Daily Mail. But we do have. Where'd it go? Okay. Bezos pledges to give most of his money away. He's vowed to give 100. Oh, give over. Oh, come on. Most of his money.
Who's going to do?
Jeff Bezos is supposed. Let me read this because this doesn't make sense. Because it says he give most of his money away, but then he's giving away 3.5 billion, even though he's worth 105 billion.
Right.
So I think you can spare a few quid.
Yeah, it looks as if he doesn't know what the hell to do with his money, does it?
But he's always surrounded by incredibly beautiful women because of how rich he is.
They all do.
Yeah.
Trophy wives, trophy. I mean, actually, I made the point the other day. Somebody said, "Well, look, if you got a lot of money, beautiful women gravitate towards you. But why do they gravitate towards you? Because you've got a lot of money,
status.
And I can't imagine looking at some of these beautiful ladies that they give much affection. What you get is a showpiece. I don't want a showpiece. I want a lady on my arm who loves me and cares for me, and obviously shows it in her face, and I show it in mine.
You're not the type
I was
of
lucky.
person.
I had 40 years of it with that sort of woman, and by golly, I'll tell you, it's worth all the tea in China. Mind you, she was good looking.
You're not the sort of guy to have a trophy wife, then, and neither would I. I would want to be with someone who I actually genuinely love.
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
But when you have,
I'll tell you, he's in love. Can't you see it in his face? He's in love.
When you have over 100 billion, I don't think you care anymore.
Oh no!
There's nothing you can really have that will make you feel anything.
Yeah, but the funny thing is that it is power, the power of money. Because if you've got 100 million, mainly what you do is you set out to turn that into 200 million. What the hell are you going to do with the extra 100 million? It's the same as the footballers. At the age of 17 or 18, is that they're making £50,000 a week, and their agent is negotiating for more. What the hell are they going to do with it? But that's not the way they look at it. Well, it shows their worth, their power, their stardom, and so on and so forth.
If I could have more than 50,000 a week, I would negotiate for more. I mean, come on. Who wouldn't? Who wouldn't?
Well, I don't know that I would actually. I mean, to be quite honest with you, I worked in an industry where there was a lot of money around, and then suddenly not a lot of money around, and up and down. But I never ever wanted more than being able to lead a comfortable life and to have a few luxuries. But I'm one of those very rare people, I suppose. And when I say that we've become a lazy nation, I've got every reason to be able to do that. Because even now, at my princely age, I work often 6 days a week, and quite often up to 12 hours a day. That's where I get my pleasure. But I have complained bitterly on this TV station and on my post pages on Facebook that nowadays, as a nation, and as actually globally, We do not have a sense of duty. It's all, what do we do for ourselves? Oh, amass a lot of money. Going back not too long ago to John F. Kennedy, who said in one of his famous speeches, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And there aren't too many people saying what they can do for their country. Oh, you get people looking after food banks and that sort of thing. But seriously, it is a frame of mind. It's a state of mind. It's not actually what you do. It's how you feel. There you go. I'll have my little rant. What have you got?
There's not much here in the Daily Mail, I'll be honest. There's a few small stories here and there.
Let's hear the official.
Should we? I think right now we've unfrozen. Shall we go to a clip?
Yes,
Whilst
we will.
we go through stories more in depth.
Yes.
So we'll go to scenes in Sussex whilst I try to find a proper one. So here we go.
Now, the headlines in the sports pages yesterday showed the English cricket team cock a hoop because they are world champions. I understand that they're world champions of something called T20 or T40 or T60 or something like that, which is a truncated form of cricket. Now, I am one of the old traditionalists. Do not lose the 5-day game. Do not lose the test matches. Those are the premier games. And up until way into the 1970s or 1980s, that was the cricket that we enjoyed each summer. For part of my life, we listened to the test match on radio. And then it was always on the BBC. And I can remember when I was working at Reuters, is that we would hive into the bar and watch at lunchtime to see how England were making out. Things have changed considerably. But one of the great things about cricket is it's a wonderful, wonderful game that actually forges nations. It forges nations more than any other game. And one of the great commentators, one of the great names of cricket was John Arlott. John Arlott was a commentator, and you could, if you mentioned cricket in the same breath, you would mention John Arlott. Now, it just so happens that his son, Tim, was a friend of mine, and I say last week, it wasn't, it was perhaps even a couple of years ago now, but Tim came down with 2 or 3 other people from Reuters, old journalistic friends, and we had lunch in the Rights of Man in the back dining room there, and we enjoyed it so much. I think we were still there at 5 o'clock when they had to all go and look for the train. So Tim Arlott, through his father John Arlott, gives us a little a link to Lewis via the Rights of Man. But this clip, as Max calls them, this little program is all about cricket and what it is, how it is, and some of the history of it. So I hope that I've got the right clip. Play it, Maestro.
All right, here we go.
Beer, wine, no spirits, but gin is becoming very popular nowadays. And here's a way to make your gin at home. Much better than going to either Southwark on the South Bank, where you used to be able to get it for tuppence, and the very expensive stuff that you see in the stores. Gin making at home. Oh, wonderful.
Hey guys! In this video I'll show you how to prepare at home an incredible liquor. It's gin. For this you need 1 liter of 50% alcohol, 17 grams of juniper, Paris must be navy blue, and I've...
Okay, so we're back after playing that for a very short period of time. So we played, that is the incorrect clip. That must be part 2 then, that we accidentally played, not part 1.
Perhaps I got that wrong as well. Who knows?
Maybe. A trip along with me.
Good
Part
shot.
2.
Which part were you just playing?
I'll bring them both in. Okay, bringing this one in. Okay, no, I think they're both the same clips, which is...
No, I don't think they are. It was part of the food and drink series. That's why you're seeing that.
Okay, this one looks more like it.
Right.
Okay, so we'll play this one. If this is incorrect, then we'll figure something out.
Right.
This should be the correct one.
Okay.
Apologies, sorry about that.
Just the one, Miss Eddie. Just the one. She didn't want me to introduce this program at all, but I fought for it, and here I am. Just the one, Miss Eddie. Our drinks program that will cover the spirits, the wine, and the beer industries, not only locally, but throughout the world. Oh, joy.
You can give it back to me now. Come on. Thank you.
In fact, have a tipple. I need to drink. Evil spirits are brewed in Lewis. Here we go again. Pubs in Lewis. I feel like a drink. Why did Lewis have so many pubs? 63? 63 pubs. Oh my goodness. I think I will pop in for a quick drink. Lewis, drinking I come. Meanwhile, where's that pint? Vroom, vroom. So, it turned into a pub. They sure tippled in Lewis in the past. Time, gentlemen, please. One of the beauties of living in this part of the world is we have lots and lots of breweries, macro, micro, and somewhere in between. Oh, and boy, do they turn out an enjoyable product. See what I mean in a moment?
The main ingredients in any beer are water, malted grains, hops, and yeast. Hops are the flowers of the hop plant, which are used for flavoring. The only other uses for hops are in herbal medicine. With these 4 ingredients, you have everything you need to make beer, but the combinations and processes make all the difference. All of these ingredients are boiled together for set amounts of time until the final mixture is filtered and sent to fermentation. Mineral contents in your water source can make a huge difference to the type of beer that you brew.
For our bachelor's level students who are taking a class called The Art and Science of Brewing, take that malted barley, put it into our mill and crack it open to expose that starch inside. We're going to start with around 500 pounds of grain, which gives us about anywhere from 8 to 12 bags of grain. From there it goes up through our auger and into the grist case and turn it into sugar. And that process can take anywhere from 45 minutes to 2.5 hours. Assurance and quality control testing we do, looking at sugar contents, which we call gravity, looking at our yeast under a microscope to try and count yeast cells that are healthy.
The history of the English inns or pubs is fascinating. So the next programme, courtesy of the British Council, takes us through the history of the English inn. And then, just to finish it off, what pubs recently were like just before lockdown. They've suffered a bit since, but this is a story of a long tale into a pub and an inn. Join me.
Flanked by the church, the rectory, and the people's homes, stands the inn. In its shade and beneath its roof, men of all degrees and of all opinions meet in comradeship and comfort. Walk through any English market town, and you'll find the inn at the center of its life. On market day, the people from the country around meet there to discuss the trend of prices, their children's health, and their home affairs. It's the same in the villages. When the sun warms the earth, they sit outside and watch the world go by. At the English inn today, there is a hospitality that to the host is just as much a sacred charge as it was to the monks and barons in the Middle Ages, who first gave bread and ale to travellers. Often the only sanctuary in out-of-the-way parts, the monasteries had a lodge open to pilgrims and other wayfarers. Later, these lodges became separate establishments and were eventually run as inns, under such signs as the Pilgrim's Inn. One example of monastic origin is the Bull, which gets its name from the papal bull, or bill, not the animal. These inns of England have seen history happen in their yards. Pilgrims and warriors have trodden their stairways. Here, medieval knights refreshed themselves on their journeys to the Crusades, to fight under the banner of St. George. The inns have preserved much of England's architecture. The early inn has preserved some of the finest carvings and treasures. Like the church, it was a sanctuary. Hence, most of these carvings have a religious meaning.
Over the road from the shops, held up by ship's timbers, is the Gardener's Arms. There seems to be a tradition in Lewes, although no one admits to it, of omitting the epithet pub or tavern. This pub is called by locals simply the Gardener's. And the Gardener's it was. The origins of this pub go back to when it was an ordinary house, owned by a gardener. Often, after work, he would invite other gardeners into his front room for a drink. Eventually, it made sense to formalize the ritual, so it turned into a pub. The Gardener's is a true pub. Unusual now, it only serves pork pies and sausage rolls. Yet each year it's in the top tier of finalists for Pub of the Year. Stood proudly on the riverbanks. Harvey's Brewery, the key industry of the town. The bloody high street of a tiny town.
You'd think the old man would give up pubs for Lent or something, wouldn't you? Well, think on. He even gets absorbed in how the pubs were in January's time. Luddite.
The Romans started the wine industry in this part of the world, and very fine wine they made indeed. During the First World War, the British government almost killed it because they needed sugar and other things needed to grow vines for the war effort. And I'm happy to say that vineyards now are flourishing, and I've visited a lot of them. I hope that over the next few weeks you'll come with me.
English sparkling wines are beginning to win an enviable reputation across the globe, and that reputation is turning into sales. British supermarket chain Waitrose has reported a 188% increase in sales of English sparkling wine last year, and that trend is expected to continue. The soil and climatic conditions in southern England are remarkably similar to those of the Champagne region in France. So much so that leading French champagne house Taittinger has bought land in Kent and has begun producing English sparkling wine. But the owners of English vineyards are not prepared to take second place. Ridgeview Estate Wines in Ditchling has been producing English sparkling wine since 1994. And recently, the company received the prestigious accolade of having its wine served by the Queen to Chinese Premier Xi Jinping at a state dinner. Ridgeview is a family business which has a strong sense of history when it comes to its products. The vineyard's trademark is Merit, named in honour of Englishman Christopher Merritt. This wine pioneer made a presentation to the Royal Society in London in 1662, explaining the process of making sparkling wines. That was 30 years before the French began producing champagne. Last year, Ridgeview produced a bumper crop and has similar ambitions for this year. The product can be seen at a variety of produce events in the region, notably Brighton and Hove's Food and Drink Fair in May. And the winemaker plans to repeat the success of last year when it introduced its range of sparkling wines to New Yorkers. Want to check out the claims that Ridgeview makes? There are plenty of stockists within the Lewis district. As one might suspect, it's available at Harvey's, but also at Larder in Ditchling, Middle Farm on the road to Eastbourne, and of course the English Wine Centre at Drusilla's Roundabout. These successes have created a rush to develop new vineyards in Sussex. Licence applications last year were up by 40%. It's not just sparkling wines that are gaining a reputation. Still wines have also been around a long time. Both are now beginning to take the French market by storm, as demonstrated by the French purchase of acreage in Kent. The key question now is if growth will mean a larger and more expansive English wine industry, or a homegrown luxury product suitable for big and glittering occasions. For the moment, only time will tell. Facing a true competitor of French champagne. So next up on Food Glorious Food, a new way to sell wines in Lewis. Symposium has a friendly, laid-back atmosphere with staff who clearly have a passion for wine. Symposium has a limited range of Sussex wines, but what they have is top drawer, and its range of quality grape types is within most budgets. Whether it's the cheese and meat platter, a single malt scotch, crunchy local bread, or a glass or two of decent claret, this wine bar has found a unique way to sell its wines. And in today's world of big is better, the Symposium has found its niche.
Okay, and we're back.
And those of you who were expecting to hear the click of leather on willow will undoubtedly be disappointed. However, the fact that I got the wrong tipple program it's pleased me no end, because I love a tipple. The history of the English pub is fascinating, thanks to the British Council doing that, although that was made sometime just briefly after the war. So the British pub has been updated quite a bit since then. But it's interesting to go back into the history in medieval times and the coaching inns and so on, of which this is one where we're broadcasting from. This is a coaching inn, and would have been something like that in those days. Certainly, it had stables, and it had a courtyard, and the coaches would pull up. It was a coaching inn. That's very interesting, but also the fact that English wines are now holding their own, very much holding their own. In fact, in blind tastings, we do extremely well against our French competitors, and the wine that is produced comes from a soil that is very conducive to producing a champagne, a sparkling type wine, and the French have been buying up, and so have a number of financial companies buying up the soil and the acreage because they see big bucks in wine producing. And so just taking a look at it there. Also, it gave us a chance to look at one of the very proud alumni, Lara Daniels, an excellent broadcaster, a beautiful lady, and actually a very nice lady too. And of course, introducing it, you see her more and more at the moment because we're going over our old catalogue, is Annie Verrill, who pops up. Any stock in trade is having a go at me. I hope that she's pulling my leg. If not, I'm a dreadful chap. You make up your mind listening to her. That's it. Okay, Uncle Max, what have you got for us now?
So I do have a story here from The Guardian. As much as I don't like The Guardian, all of their stories are actually interesting, even though it's very, very biased, and you have to take what they say with a big pinch of salt. A lot of the times they have very interesting headlines and very interesting stories.
I meant to say, just to interrupt you there, is that a lot of people would say the same thing about a number of the other papers as well, not just The Guardian.
Well, no, none of the
That's
papers,
your personal view.
None of the papers can really be
Yeah.
fully trusted. But from The Guardian here, Rishi Sunak calls China systemic challenge in signs of a softer UK stance. So The Guardian says here that Rishi Sunak is going to be going softer on China. Now, I'm sure it's just a coincidence, but I don't know if you are. I've mentioned this before, but the reason Rishi Sunak is so rich is largely because of his wife's wealth. His wife is so rich is because of her father, Rishi Sunak's father-in-law. Rishi Sunak's father-in-law owns some of the patents for the Chinese social credit system. That is where he got all of his wealth from. So now he's going soft on China. I'm sure the two aren't related, and it just happens to be a coincidence. So that's very interesting.
Well, yes, I mean, it's a Chinese link. I mean, I don't feel badly about questioning if somebody has got these links, because they are the first to question other countries, other companies, and so on, and to point the finger. We're not pointing the finger. I think you're just making a statement of fact. You can draw your own conclusions, but it is one of those little snippets of information that's important to know.
Yeah. Well, we have another story here about Jeff Bezos. Jeff, and this headline is a load of rubbish, and so was the Daily Mail sub-headline. This one's from The Guardian. Jeff Bezos vows to give away most of his fortune. And he also hands Dolly Parton $100 million. But that's unrelated. Jeff Bezos vows to give away most of his fortune. Now, what would you say is most of 110 billion?
Well, I would say at least 50 billion.
Yes, I would too, at least. That's most, or even, or majority. But no, he is giving away $10 billion over 10 years. So $1 billion a year. That is not most. That is a fairly small percentage in the long run, because when you have over 100 billion, you never have to worry again in your life.
Certainly not. I mean, the 50 billion that I've got just isn't sufficient.
Yeah, no, it's not, is it? But let's see here. He is committed to give 10 billion over the next 10 years. Do you know what charity to? The Bezos Earth Fund. So he's giving away his money to his own charity. This is clearly a tax write-off. This isn't. I'm sure that 10 billion is mostly going on salaries. I don't know that for a fact. Just an educated guess based on all the other charities.
I think just before we're totally condemnatory, although I must say it does just sound a little fishy in the scheme of things. Giving it here, giving it there. But one of the very successful relationships is that between Reuters and the Reuters Foundation, where Reuters, being a very, very wealthy company, give a substantial amount to the Reuters Foundation, which primarily trains journalists in other parts of the world. And it did a very... I know because I set up its television training arm way back in 1992. It always worked very successfully and managed to have a clean dividing line, so that there was no question that money from Reuters being put into the foundation was ever a tax write-off or anything. It was probably spent. And in fact, as I recall, there's from having had one extra glass of champagne and getting my fingers very badly burned by the accountant, it was very strictly run. Dear. Keith, and your extra glasses of champagne. I'll get you into trouble.
But yeah, no, it does sound a little bit suspicious
I
if you
agree.
ask me.
I agree. Yeah.
What local stories? Did you have any?
No, they were all very dull this morning, and as I pointed out, the ones that I could find were very old, and I haven't been able to access some of the more recent ones. But perhaps we'll do that before the end of the program. One thing, perhaps what I would like to tell you about, because we'll start to let people know in a little while, is one of our Christmas programs. And that is that we are having an evening of carols in the White Hart Hotel, where our studio is based, in the what was known as the Farmer's Bar. And those people who know the hotel will know it as the oak-beamed, oak-panelled, rather lush bar. It is still a bar, but it's more of a lounge now. And in its day, it was the centre of some really great social activity in Lewes. The times have changed, but what we plan to do is to have a carol service with the Paddock Singers, which is an all-female choir, and they are coming in on the 22nd at 7 o'clock. Actually, I'll probably be in a little bit earlier than 7 because they want to rehearse.
It starts
and set everything up. And then they will sing a medley of carols on and off throughout the evening until 10 o'clock to an invited audience. Because it's so small, we can't just open up the doors and say, come on in. But that invited audience will be treated to a glass or two of wine and a nibble or so, and will enjoy the whole ambience of Christmas. We're doing this for two reasons. One, we want to have a nice Christmas program on Mirador Television. That's something we can concentrate on, and we don't have to go far from home. But two, there's always the criticism of the Lewes High Street that at Christmas it does not light up enough, that it's a dour street, and I've been critical of it myself. This will be just one little contribution to the Christmas on the High Street that may make it just seem a little bit more of a Christmassy type place, and that we can enjoy Christmas celebrations in the White Hart. They're clearly visible from outside and clearly visible on our own television channel. Where does it go out, Max?
It goes out to YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, sort of, and Blogger.
And LinkedIn.
Oh, LinkedIn as well, yes.
So that's where you'll be able to see it and see the fun and games. But this is a Lewes choir, but one of great distinction, and has sung in many public places to great acclaim. So the Paddock Singers, this is on Mirador Television, but there will be a live party. It will be a live presentation, and we hope that we will do it justice, because throughout the coming year, Mirador wants to do more and more live, and in some instances from abroad. So just so you know what our ambition is, but leading up to Christmas, that's the main product, if you like, that we're going to have. And you are very welcome to join us and sing a few carols, and nominally sip a glass of wine just before Christmas.
Okay, yeah. Shall we go to the Potter's Wheel?
We shall.
Okay, and we're back. So recently we heard in the headlines that councils could go bankrupt. And we have here, once again, The Guardian. 2 Tory-run councils warn MPs of possible bankruptcy. That is the leaders of Kent and the leaders of Hampshire County. So that's Kent and Hampshire are the 2 counties
actually,
that could go bankrupt.
Put into parentheses, Sussex. You've got Hampshire, Sussex, Kent.
Sussex is right in between.
Absolutely.
And that's where we are. So that's concerning.
I don't know about the county council, but certainly the district council is now that it's blended with Eastbourne. I would say that we must be under threat.
It does say
it's gone bust already once.
Kent and Hampshire County Council.
Kent. Well, I've never actually heard before that Kent or Hampshire have been in trouble. But I think what they're
Kent is having to deal
with.
Kent is having to deal with the brunt of the migrant crisis.
Right. Yeah. And what about Hampshire?
No idea.
No, nor me. But the fact of the matter is, I think that perhaps what's happening, and the reason that the Guardian picked up on this story, is that all local councils. Oh, God bless you. Kevin is here. He's getting the beer ready, chaps. So if you want to come in and have a really nice glass of beer, Kevin has done his duty and so on. And what he's done is he's asked me, as he normally does, he's a very civilized man. He's asked me, a very courteous man, to test it. Hang on a minute. Oh, delicious. Good. Delicious. Good. There we go. At 9, no, it's 10:13.
10:13.
Sun isn't quite over the yard arm, but to hell with it. Right. What was I saying about county councils? Was I?
2 of them going bankrupt.
Yes, but I think a lot are. You see, one of the things that the government is saying is to recoup the 50 billion. They keep on calling it the hole in the UK finances. Is that they are going to have to cut back on public services. Now, the first thing you think is that somebody in Westminster is going to actually pull the plug. But that's not the way it works. What happens is that it says to local councils around the country, you are going to have to do with so much X less. That's how it does its savings. And that will affect every county council. It will also have an effect, a knock-on effect, to, as much as town councils, but certainly district councils who have a budget to provide certain services. So that's where they say that they're going to go bankrupt because, for instance, I don't know, as an example, perhaps they look after Meals on Wheels, and then suddenly they are told that they haven't got the money for Wheels on Wheels, but the hospitals and the social services are saying, we've got to look after elderly people with Meals on Wheels. That's where the really tough part of handling a budget comes in.
Well, I don't know who was it. I think it was the Mirror had the ridiculous story the other day about the Meals on Wheels. The NHS staff were eating meals in hospital because they can't afford it at home. And what a ridiculous story! It was just I can't remember exactly what it was. I have to go find the headline. It was just a ridiculous story.
Yes, I mean, well, it is a ridiculous story. I mean, I equate that to the fact that people who work in the pub is when the shutters come down, is if there's an open barrel of beer or food left in the kitchen, is the boss will say, "Come on, sit down."
Oh yeah, no, chips
same thing
is the most common one. That's I know someone who works at a pub, and whenever there's cheesy chips left over, they'll just all right, I guess I'm having cheesy chips. Then.
Absolutely, I wish I was working in a pub. Yes, it's Oh, it's one of those things. I think that's where, as you said, you like some of the Guardian stories that they come up with some good stuff. That's one where they're scraping the barrel. If somebody has sort of said, "Oh, look into this," and
no, that was the Mirror.
Or is it Mirror?
Yeah.
Whatever. Have come back with. Oh, guess what? Because there's always somebody that will rush outside and talk to external sources, mostly the media. Guess what? They're forcing us to eat the meals that are really meant for the patients. Yeah. And then the reporter only does half his job. He doesn't get to the bottom of things.
Shocking.
And it sounds as if the poor old nurses and doctors and so on are having to eat hospital meals because they can't afford them at home. That's
and that's what they ran as their headline for the morning.
Yes. Well, we see the headlines regularly each morning here, and I must say that some of them can be a bit squirrely.
Yeah, or with the Daily Star, you expect it. With the Sun, you sort of expect it. But when it comes to all the others, it does get ridiculous. And the Mirror, I think you've mentioned it as well, and then both you and Stuart mentioned it. The Mirror has really gone downhill.
Yes, the Mirror was at one time a very, very respectable paper. It was considered to be the voice of the left, not the extreme left, just the left. And it had very, very good editors. It had very, very good journalists. And generally speaking, was, as I say, a respectable paper, if you like. Nowadays, it seems to have tried to follow the Sun and be sensational and dig up stories that actually are surface stories, not really stories at all. But they do that, and it is sad to see such a great paper reduced to those circumstances. I mean, the Sun, on the other hand, is a fairly new paper. And Rupert Murdoch got hold of it, and it is what it is.
How long has the Sun been around for?
I'm not sure, but I think it was a 1970s paper or something like that. I don't think it.
When did the Sun start?
Right, and of course, for the longest time, is page 3 was one of the everybody would chuckle and so on, but nonetheless, everybody would take a look at page 3 because it featured topless ladies.
Hang on a minute. Can I just say, I went to look up when the Sun started. Would you like to know when it started?
When?
4.6 billion years ago.
Oh.
Let me type in Sun newspaper.
Yes,
okay.
You could actually believe that somebody somewhere will read that and they will think, oh gosh, that newspaper is very old. That's the trouble with the web.
God, honestly. All right. No, the Sun newspaper started on 15th of September, 1964.
I wasn't far off.
Yeah.
I said 1970s. Yeah, 1964. Yeah. Whereas I'm not quite sure when the Telegraph started, but I think it was the century before last. Actually, the first newspaper ever was the Financial Times, and that started towards the end of the 1800s, and it was owned and developed by a man called Horatio Bottomley. And Horatio Bottomley was one of the great fraudsters of British history. He was a member of Parliament. He had a racing stable. He lived in a big mansion. And where was that big mansion? Where? At Upper And where is Upper About 5 miles from Lewes.
Really?
Indeed. And but Horatio Bottomley also had the very jingoistic newspaper called John Bull, which urged young men to join up for the First World War and go to France and fight. And what he did was he ran competitions, but he would make sure that his staff won the competitions and put the money back into the paper, and he hived it off. And after he was caught, he was obviously banned from the House of Commons. But such was the strength of his personality and character, that the Speaker of the House said that he would be sadly missed in the House of Commons because his speeches were also witty and forceful. And then they carted him off to jail. So there you are.
I looked up what's the world's longest running paper, and that is... Okay, it's called the... Could you read this second word?
Zeitung. Wiener Zeitung. The German paper.
The Austrian paper, yeah. Published in 1703 and still running today. That is the longest continuous running newspaper.
Well, there have been some very, very famous and very respected German papers. Germany, actually, in a funny sort of way, has rivaled the Brits for being famous for journalism. And I think there's Der Bild and several other newspapers in Germany that are of great substance, and managed to come out of the fire of the Second World War. Am I right, or am I right? I think so, Keith. I think actually the is it the Washington Post or the
New York Times?
New York Times is the other oldest, very, very old newspaper.
They're the oldest American newspaper.
Right. Yeah. Incidentally, we actually complain bitterly, those of us who like to read, that if you're dealing with social media, you need to get things in the first 10 or 15 seconds. Otherwise, you've had it. Nobody will pay attention to you. But that the headline in traditional newspapers came because in the United States, if news happened on the West Coast, they had to wire it to New York, so that the New York people could put it into the newspaper. And in between, it was sent by wire. These wires stretched across the vast American plains, and quite often were pulled down by Indians, were pulled down by sandstorms, all sorts of other storms, sometimes by bandits and so on. So when they are sending stuff to the New York office, they would alert them to a story, and they would have to get the story into sort of 10 or 15 words before they actually started the detail. Because those 10 or 15 words might be the only part of the story that the New York office would get, and they had to work it out from there. There you go. You didn't know that, did you?
So I have a clip lined up here. If you would like to play that, could you tell me what? Just give a brief overview of Tall Tales.
Oh, Tall Tales. Well, there are a series, which actually one day we'll play as a series instead of the odd ones. But a couple of years ago, I was urged by various members of my staff and so on, because Stuart Dalby and I are famous for standing in pubs and standing in coffee shops and so on, and telling tall tales of our days as journalists. And we call them tall tales, but actually, believe it or not, they're all true. So several of my tall tales have been put onto video, and I've told them. I'm not sure which tall tale this is, but whichever it is a tall tale of one of my experiences, and it is 100% absolutely genuine and true. Bing! Want to play it?
Yeah, we'll go to it now. All right,
okay,
here we go.
Only 18 when I set off for Canada. It was a long way to go. It goes on 5,000 to 6,000 miles, all on my own, and a real adventure. And the first year was pretty good. I spent the 2 semesters as required at the university, and then I got a job for the summer. And I went out into the Rocky Mountains between two small communities, at least in those days they were small communities, called Revelstoke and Golden. Wild, it was wild. And my job was to help build the Trans-Canada Highway between those 2 points, because there was no road there. The only way in was by rail, a train that had been built many, many years, almost a century before. Well, not the train itself, but the tracks. And I remember on that first journey, getting off the train at a place called Stony Creek. I thought I was at the ends of the earth. It was raining. There was mud and streams flowing down the mountainside. There was nobody there. And there I stood beside the track, watching my safe train, which only came once a week, disappear into the mountainside. You've no idea how you feel at that first few days. But it was very fortuitous, because I learned a number of things in that space of 2 or 3 months that I worked in the Rocky Mountains. I still got an English haircut. On the odd occasion, I wore my school blazer with the mitre on. It's English. I was English in a Canadian setting. And boy, didn't they know it. And I would go into the bunkhouse, and on one occasion, I reached for the gravy jug, and because the chap had a very heavy accent who was sitting opposite to me and said, "That's not gravy," I didn't understand. So I smiled at him and poured the gravy all over this wonderful meal to find out that it was chocolate sauce. Chocolate sauce sitting on the table when in fact you've got potatoes and meat in front of you. Oh, that was a learning curve. And the same chap said a little later, he said to one of his companions, "You sure can tell that young fellow is English, can't you?" And I thought, well, yeah, I suppose you can. And he said, "Why do you say that?" He said, "Because he eats his pie with a spoon." Canadians always eat with a fork. What a giveaway. Never mind the blazer, never mind the haircut. But it was that summer that my actual athletic prowess really came out, because I broke the half-mile record and the high jump record within minutes of each other. And I also, not sure it was a record, but did pretty well in the weightlifting department. That was a few days later. But first of all, it's the half-mile record. When you go to work in these camps, there's not much to do. You work, you sleep, you eat, and after a month or two, you get out and you pick up your check. Very nice it is too. But on a Sunday, no television, no limited books, no newspapers. They would probably come midweek. So you just hung around, and it was very boring. Understanding that and needing work done, the camp bosses would say, "Would you like to earn some more money?" As a university student, wow, would I like to earn some more money? And you got time and a half for working on a Sunday. It's rather nice. So this particular Sunday, I was deputed to go up the mountainside and to start digging little potholes to see whether we could hit gravel, stones that they could use to lay on the bed of the road which we were building. So off I trotted, hey-ho, shovel slung over my shoulder, clambered up the mountainside, found a suitable place to start to dig holes, and started to dig away. After a little while, I heard some stones being loosened up on the railway track. I paid no attention at all, because there was a railway gang that lived, yes, they stayed up in a little hut on the railway site. And they, like us, had nothing to do on a Sunday, so they would earn some extra money going out, testing the track, and that sort of thing. That's who I thought it was. I continued to merrily dig away at my hole, hoping that I would hit gravel pretty soon. This back-breaking work. And then I looked up to see a huge grizzly bear coming down the mountainside, his beady eyes fixed on me. I hadn't had lunch yet. He was determined to have his lunch, and I was it. I threw the spade down, and I took off down the mountainside. I was dressed in work clothes. I had big work boots on. They came way up past my ankles. They got thick soles. They were leather. They were toe-capped with hard stuff, so that if you dropped anything on them, you wouldn't crush your feet. And I took off down the mountainside at a great rate of knots. The spring runoff was still there. Water was still cascading down the mountain. So the mud must have been good 2 or 3 feet deep at some stages. I managed to avoid disappearing into the mud altogether. But at the side of the track, down the mountain I went, lickety-split, determined that this grizzly was not going to have me for lunch that particular day. I came round a bend in the track, and there was a D9 Caterpillar tractor. Now, if you've never been on a construction site and you've never seen a D9 Caterpillar tractor, they are huge. They are huge. And they stand about a story and a half. So if you look at a small house and try to guess that you're looking at just below the bedroom window, that's about the height, 7-8 feet. The driver said that I did not touch his vehicle. I did not touch the bulldozer in leaping into the seat beside him and clutching him, trembling with fear that this grizzly was going to come around and find that the D9 Caterpillar tractor was no obstacle whatsoever, and he would have double lunch. He'd have both of us. The old Caterpillar driver, the tractor driver, of course, had been around for a long time, and he was killing himself with laughter that I'd come down the mountainside at such a rate. But he swore that I did not touch his vehicle, that I leapt from the ground and I got into the seat beside him. So I'd done 7 feet. And even in those days, the high jump record was only about 6 feet something. So there I had set one record. But I previously set the record for the half mile, because it had been about half a mile that I raced down the mountain to get out of the way of the grizzly who wasn't stopping. He was coming after me. And he was determined, as grizzly bears can be, to have me as a meal. So in talking to the driver later and figuring out at what time I actually saw the grizzly, to what time I reached his tractor, we figured that I beat the half-mile record by a good 5 or 6 seconds. So two records in one afternoon. And believe me, it's when the adrenaline gets going, it's amazing how it pumps you. It's amazing that you can do all sorts of things which you wouldn't do ordinarily. And it was a grizzly that helped me achieve this marvelous record-breaking feat. And afterwards, I felt quite good about it, except, apart from the driver, there was nobody to confirm what I'd done. So I never, ever got a gold medal, silver medal, or a bronze medal for breaking this record. All I got was a giggle from the driver, and perhaps a little self-satisfaction of knowing that I had been as speedy as I had, even though I was driven by a grizzly bear. And if you say, oh, what was it, grizzly bear? Yeah, you can tell a grizzly. It's not only his size, but a grizzly, unlike any other bear, has a hump just behind his head. So it is easy to identify. Later on, I learned that black bears you can frighten off a little. The only time to worry about a black bear is if it's got its young with them. It is very protective of its cubs, or if it's ill, in which case it will pay no notice. But I later on managed to control black bears and brown bears with very little problem, bravely waving my hands. But this was my first experience in the wild with a wild animal who was ready to be feral. He wasn't going to take a polite young Englishman who said, "I'm terribly sorry to disturb you." Seriously, he wanted me. A few days later, I was working around the camp when the foreman came and said, "Keith, go with Joe over there, take this pump and take it up about 100 yards above the camp, because there is a spring there, and later somebody will come and they will attach the pump to the spring and we can have some fresh water." Now the pump, I don't know, is 80, 90, 100 pounds. It was heavy. Joe grabbed one side of it and I grabbed the other. We could just about manage it, and we went up to the spot designated by the foreman, found the spring, and as I was about to put down, or together we were about to put down this huge pump, I heard a rustle in the trees behind me, and I looked around, and here was this great big teddy bear face gazing through the greenery at me. Now, I suspect this was not a grizzly this time, that it was a brown bear, but I didn't know the difference at the time. And anyway, all I could see was its face, and it was a teddy bear face, and it was looking at me. We'd obviously disturbed the bear when he was looking for various bits of greenery and nuts and so on and so forth to solve his hunger problem, but I didn't know that. I yelled at Joe, "Bear!" and took off back to the camp. I didn't break any speed records, I don't think, but when I got back to the camp, I realized I'd left Joe well behind. The pump was still in my hand. I carried what it took two of us to take up to the spring. I brought back on my own because the adrenaline had flown and the fear factor had kicked in. He said I performed superhuman feats. Well, what an athletic summer that was. And I'm happy to say that as it did go on, I learned a bit more about the wildlife. And although I, to this day, would be very careful about meeting a bear in the wild, generally speaking, unless it's a grizzly, and don't mess with a grizzly, then what you would find is that the other bears are as shy of you as you are of them, and little arm waving, and you can get rid of them. And actually much later, many years later, I lived on a steelhead trout fishing river in North Vancouver. I had 3 acres and a beautiful house, and it was right at the base of the mountains. I had a Great Dane, which is a wonderful dog, very affectionate, but also very protective. I was fiddling around on the banks of the river one day, and once again I heard a rustle. Didn't pay too much attention. And then I looked up, and here was a huge black bear coming towards me. Well, I'd learned my lesson this time, hadn't I? I raced towards him, yelling, "Bear! Bear!" waving my arms and sort of, "Go away!" Actually, I wasn't as polite as that. I was saying to him, "Push off." And at the same time, yelling to my wife, "Get the dog in, get the dog in," because my fear was that the Great Dane would come rushing out, would protect me. The bear would, with one swipe, break the dog's neck. Bears are terribly powerful animals. But instead, the bear took one look at me when he became aware of me waving my arms, put his nose in the air, sniffed, and sort of said, "You're not worth bothering with," and ambled back into the orchard and paid absolutely no attention. Luckily, my wife had kept the dog in, so both the dog and I were saved on that particular afternoon. But if you really want to be athletic, get yourself into a situation where a grizzly is coming at you, because believe me, the adrenaline will kick in. And if you can possibly record it on your camera, on your phone nowadays, while you're doing that, you can prove that you will beat world records. In my case, the half mile and the high jump. all in a space of a couple of minutes or so. Well, that was my first experience in a summer in Canada, and I had many more, and hopefully I'll get the opportunity to tell you about some of them. Till then, toodle bit.
Okay, and we are back. That was that was the show Tall Tales.
Right.
True story about you getting chased by a bear.
Absolutely. Believe me, I'd never been in the wilds anywhere when I went out to Canada as an 18-year-old, and it was actually the following summer before I was launched into the wilds. So I was 19, and it was my first summer in Canada, and I very much started to respect the wildlife. I mean, I was very timid about brown bears and black bears to begin with, until I found out they were more frightened of me than they were I was of them. But the fact is that a grizzly bear you do not mess with.
No.
He will come and he sees you as food, and away he goes. And to be faced with this bloody great bear on a Sunday afternoon with very few people around, in fact, almost nobody around at all, and to see him coming down and with licking his lips and a glint in his eye is, believe me, the adrenaline sent me hurtling down that mountain at one great hell of a lot. And to jump up beside the driver on that D9 Caterpillar tractor without touching the tractor just showed how frightened I was. As time went on, I got used to bears, and I didn't mind waving my arms and telling, shoo, go away. And 9 times out of 10 they would, but not a grizzly. And you told the grizzly because of the hump on his back. He got a very particular type of hump. If the hump was there, you got out of the way very quickly. And they are quite an intelligent bear too. They know how to hunt.
Well, the one you have to be extremely careful of is polar bears. They will just kill you no matter what.
Yes, they will. The only thing is, of course, they are limited in their range. But yes, those people in the north, places in Alaska, for instance, have great problems because the bears, depending upon how warm the winter is or how plentiful the food is, will come wandering down the streets. And that's when the children have to be herded in. We had that actually in North Vancouver where we lived. We lived on a steelhead trout fishing river, and the bears would come down. And 9 times out of 10, they didn't bother us. But if they did, we could phone the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and say, look, there is a bear, and the chances are the big problem with allowing a bear to wander around in semi-civilized areas is because of children. Children sort of tend to dart and so on, and it would frighten a bear, and the bear could swipe it and kill it. And so what they would do is they would come down, they would shoot it with a sleeping pill, a dart, and paint a great big white patch on its bottom, and then take it back up the mountain. And if it came down again, it was considered incorrigible. And the way that you told whether it was coming down again was because of this big white patch that they painted on its bum. That was another thing to watch out for.
Wow.
Incidentally, I've finished Kevin's drink. It's good. You can come in with impunity and have a drink here today.
Yeah. Well, we've only got 15 minutes left, and I've got a couple stories to go through. We've got one here in the pages of the Daily Mail. We have about inflation. This is all within the last 2 years, these inflation rates. Products that have had some of the steepest increases are Heinz tomato ketchup. It is 53% more expensive than it was.
Really? That is quite a hike.
Dolmio lasagna sauce, which is like the number one lasagna sauce you get it all the time. 47% increase. Heinz cream chicken soup, 46%. Anchor butter, 45%. What else is there here?
Does it cover ice cream? I am a sucker for ice cream. As you know, having been at lunch with me, I always have ice cream as a dessert. I never vary. And when I pick it up from the supermarket, it has gone up from a tub of family ice cream sort of thing. It was £2.20, I think. It is now £3.50, and that's over a period of only about 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, they do. Muller, Cornish vanilla, you got banana, chocolate, and flakes. Muller ice cream has gone up 34%.
Well believe it.
Yeah.
Well believe it.
But they say inflation is only at 9 point something percent is what they claim it is. And you go into the shop, your bill is up 50% from what it used to be.
That's right.
It's not.
No.
It's not
the way that they determine inflation is over what's called a basket of goods. They take the average price. I do believe that I saw. Sorry?
No, they've recently changed how they calculate inflation. It used to be that way. If you use the basket of goods method, inflation is actually worse than they say it is. But the government changed the way they calculate inflation, and it doesn't look as bad.
Well, somebody is still calculating inflation that way because alternative figures that have been given over the last little while, it shows inflation actually for the households, and you're absolutely right, is at 15%. So yes, we're paying 15% more, not 10%.
Almost every single time in history, as soon as inflation has hit 60%, there has been a revolution of some kind or overthrowing of the government of some kind because people can't afford to feed their children. They can't feed their families, their wives, themselves. And that's when people really start to get mad, is when it hits 60%.
Well, Stuart Dolby says that there was a sort of a mini protest down at the bank yesterday. I can't remember what it's about. But
which bank?
I think outside NatWest. But Stuart actually got involved with them, as you might know Stuart would. And every time he kept on asking them why they were there, and every time they gave their reasons, he was able to debunk it. To the end, the leader sort of said, "Sir, can we walk down the street with you?" to try and steer him away from anybody who was listening to their propaganda. But you're absolutely right. We were seeing more and more disturbance. I doubt that our form of government is not so flexible that it will be ever taken by force of arms. I doubt it. But certainly you're right that unrest is beginning to increase amongst. Let's speak unkind and call them the masses. Yeah. Incidentally, one other thing that financially is we had a bit of intelligence this morning that the Poppy Day appeal, which takes place every year, and it's particularly through collecting boxes and so on, looks as if it's down this year. Now, on Sunday afternoon, I've been to the remembrance service many years, and sometimes it can be quite sparse. On Sunday, it was very, very well attended. So it's not that people are turning away from remembering the First and Second World Wars, but I think that, like any charity, is that when times get tough, charity giving is the first thing to go. So it's sad, but nonetheless.
Food banks are running out of food as well.
Well, in the lockdown period, we did a certain amount of work for Action Cancer, which has a store at the bottom of the town here. But Action Cancer claim that they lost £44 million in lockdown. That's a hell of a lot to lose as a charity.
Which charities are?
Action Cancer. Action Cancer UK.
Action Cancer UK. So that's rough.
Right. Where are we?
We are at 10:51. We have 9 minutes left.
9 minutes left. Perhaps I can just tell you a couple of the things that are going to happen in the next 3 days. Tomorrow, Stuart Dolby will have his usual energy matters. Stuart is an expert on the energy sector, and he watches almost on a day-to-day basis, and he reports back to you, our viewers, each Wednesday on the latest that's happening, and tries to explain why it's happening, and also explain why it shouldn't have happened in the first place. And then he has a conversation with Stuart Dolby, and tomorrow he's got a lady politician coming in to explain some of the things that they're doing. So it's Stuart Dolby tomorrow morning, and he will take us through. Well, he'll take us through most of the day. And then on Thursday, we've got the young man here. We've got Daring Dan, Mad Max, or Mighty Max, depending on your point of view, along with Liza Page. And what do you call your program now?
Age and Youth.
Age and Youth. And that's what it is. Age and Youth. They squabble like cat and dog. But actually, it's amazing how somehow the differences in age and differences in persuasion get them to a meeting of the minds somewhere along the way. Is that reasonable to say?
Yeah.
Right.
One thing I had here, brought up on my phone, the next national rail strike is November the 26th. Is the next national rail strike. That's across the entire country. No trains will be running. No rail replacement will be running either. Because why would they want to help you? That's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things that we're plagued with at the moment, and all sorts of other people are striking. They're trying what's known as the Fabian tactics. That is, striking a little here and striking a little there and striking. There's no major strike, even though the unions have tried hard to coordinate and have a national strike, the like of which has never been seen since the 1920s.
Well, they did do it for a couple days, a couple months ago. A couple months ago, they did a 3 or 4 day strike, and there was nothing running at all.
Yes, not. I mean, you could still get food and drink and so on.
Well,
a national
strike
is a bit like lockdown. The streets are empty. Nothing is moving. But they've been mainly sort of wildfire strikes. A little here and a little there. But anyway, you were saying when I so rudely interrupted you.
No, that's about it, really. They had a couple days strike a couple months ago. That was a national one, and that was the biggest strike since Margaret Thatcher's era.
Right.
That was all over the papers.
And on Friday, we have our usual potpourri of what's happened in the week, but mostly it's our time to catch up with what's happening in the States. And Melissa Conte comes on from New York and has a chat to me and tells us what the latest situation is with Joe Biden and with Donald Trump. Because Trump will make a big announcement today. I think it's later today.
Later today.
Yes.
So I reckon he's going to announce that he's running.
That he isn't running, or
that he is.
That's
my prediction.
Well, Max, I have a tendency to agree with you. Even though the rooms are not in his favour at the moment after the midterm elections, the man has got such a huge ego that I'm quite sure that he thinks that he can persuade people back to his persuasion. If in fact he does run, but the important thing is, will the I want to say the Conservative Party, will the not the Democrats, the Republicans actually take him on board? He's now beginning to look like an electoral liability. If he hasn't got the backing of a major party, it's going to be very difficult for him.
No.
There was no independent that's ever won in the United States, I don't think.
There never has been. But he will run as a Republican, and the Republican Party will have to accept him. Amongst Republican voters, he has 60% support among Republican.
Does he still? Well, then I guess that you're right. It'll be interesting. I don't think we should ever underestimate the power that the playmakers in both the American parties have.
Yeah.
They have enormous power and enormous resources.
I don't see it being the same situation we had in this country where, like, Boris Johnson had the majority of the Conservative Party support, but a few backbenchers went, oh, actually, no, I don't like you, so we're not going to let you run, even though he had support of the majority of the actual party members.
Mm-hmm. No,
I don't see that.
I don't think it will be. Our politics are the same, but not similar, if you know what I mean. I think it was Harry S. Truman, no, it wasn't. It was Winston Churchill, who said of America and Britain, two great nations separated by a common language. But also, I think we were separated by a common politics. We're both democratic, but there the likeness ends in terms of the way that we actually elect either our president or, well, we don't elect our president. That's the king now, what's the queen? And the way that they elect the presidents in the United States is through a popular vote. So there's a big difference there, of course.
No, they don't. They have the
electoral colleges.
Yeah, they do. It's not called first past the post. It's called
proportional representation.
No, American version of first past the post.
Well, it's the first with the number of electoral votes, isn't it? College votes, electoral colleges.
Yeah.
And
so you can have more votes from the electoral college, but you don't have to have the popular vote.
Yes, that's right. The popular vote. In fact, some instances, candidates have won the popular vote but not won the election.
Yeah, it's happened quite a few times. We are at 10:59, so we're going to say goodbye. Thank you very much for watching.
Absolutely. Thank you for being with us this morning. We've gone over a variety of situations. We've looked at a couple of programs. The cricket program, I will assure you, will come back, even though my version of cricket was with a bottle opener and pretty girls pouring champagne into glasses. But I'm sure that did not displease you in any way whatsoever.
Okay. All right. So
ready to say goodbye?
Yep.
Okay. Toodle pip until tomorrow.
Yep. Goodbye. Tomorrow at 8:30 will be me and Stuart Dolby. So stay tuned for that. Thank you very much.
This is Mirador Television broadcasting out of the White Hart Hotel in Lewis, in the United Kingdom, in the southern part of the country.
Yep.
So,
thank you very much for watching.